If you've smelt this smell before, you've either been to the fish market, have let mushrooms go rotten in your fridge, have a very sick houseplant, or need to go to the doctor. And that's exactly what I was smelling when I was cleaning up this Alocasia. But don't worry, I know exactly what's causing that really strong fishy smell. This is how I figured it out and my attempt at fixing it. So, a few of you may be aware I wasn't just growing houseplants in my spare time. I was also working for a large commercial grower here in the UK that produces millions of herbs and outdoor ornamentals for retailers across the country. If you're in the UK and you've added anything to your garden, there's a decent chance it came through that distribution centre. Sometimes these outdoor plants cross over into the more tropical plant realm, where the tropical plants are treated more like a tender perennial or even an annual, meaning they can survive in the summer in the UK and they'll die back under the ground into their corms or get absolutely demolished by the frost. One of these tender plants we grew was the calla lily, or Xanthadacia. Anyway, one day I was working on the peat-free trials and I had to collect some data from a crop that was growing in one of our more remote greenhouses. There weren't many people around. So I'm in this crop and I'm pretty sure it was Scabiosa butterfly blue, and I'm taking them to the trolley to take pictures of their roots, and I noticed out the corner of my eye a little patch of droopy brown calla lilies amongst the sea of colour, so they really stood out. And I thought, that's odd, let's check these out, and cue me becoming Sherlock Holmes for the morning. As I'm walking over, I'm looking around to see if I can see anything unusual as to why this patch of just dead plants exists. So first I check the ground to see if someone spilled a chemical, nothing. Then I look up at the irrigation pipes to check for leaks, also nothing. These plants stand on concrete slabs, so water pools sometimes, but visually everything looked fine. I get about 2 meters away and I'm suddenly hit with really foul smell coming from a circle of dying plants. I notice that in the air circling the wilted plants, there are loads of these tiny fungus gnats or scarred fly, clearly attracted by the damp conditions amongst the rotting smell. With my hand half covered over my O's, because honestly it was powerful, I lean over and I pick one of them up, and I notice the stem is kind of this translucent green and it's all mushy, like if you cook rhubarb. The whole plant is keeled over, like it can't support itself, and it just looks disgusting. I take one out of the pot and smell just gets worse and worse. Luckily, I'm wearing those blue latex gloves because, as I found out later, the smell can get onto your hands and be slightly hard to get rid of for the first few hand washes. So I go and get the site supervisor, and one of the growers happened to be in her office, and I take them to the patch. The grower is like an older man in his 50s, and he's seen this all the time before in the Netherlands where he used to work. It's pretty common, particularly amongst Caladiums and things like that. They're really, really tricky crops to grow, and it's also very common in calla lilies. Plants that have rhizomes, corms, bulbs are particularly susceptible to soft rotting bacteria called Erwinia, and calla lilies, basically delicacies for Erwinia carotivora. We would need like a lab diagnosis to know the exact bacteria and subspecies, but honestly the smell alone could have written the report. Erwinia is basically spread by water, which can come from raindrops, irrigation pipes, or forming in pools on the floor. This type of bacteria love the warm and wet conditions, and the only really preventative is to make sure nothing is sitting in the water and there's good airflow to dry up any wet leaves. Once it's in the plant, it releases an enzyme that basically liquefy the tissues, so your plant turns into like a soup, a biological smoothie, a broth of sadness. The bacterial soft rot is so common in houseplants like Alocasia, Colocasia, and Caladiums, but even in the commercial industry, there's very little to do about it. So we ended up having to chuck away the ones that were in the brown circle of dying plants and a few around it, as it does like to spread easily. There are a few things you can do at home though for at least an attempt at saving the cherished plant. I used to always overwater Alocasias, and I'm a lot better now, but I did come across that dreadful smell quite a few times. So the last attempt ditch to save this Alocasia, I cut up any infected stems and leaves, felt the roots to see if any of them were mushy, and I cut them off too. Completely removed the soil, used hydrogen peroxide solution to kill off any bacteria on the remaining plant, and used a copper-based fungicide. I know what you're thinking, that's for molds, not bacteria, but the copper is the important part. Copper is effective at suppressing bacteria, so it helps give the plant a final fighting chance of recovery. And lastly, learn from my mistakes. Make sure in the future all your tools are sterilized, that there's good airflow around your plant, that you're letting the water drain from their pots so they're not sat in water. Keep your house plants that have rime zones or corms on the drier side of watering. So there you have it. That's the tale of the fishy smell, the rotting calla lilies, the bacterial villain known as Erwinia, and how I try and save my plants from it. If you want more storytelling videos like this, I've got plenty of stories to tell. So ask me a question in the comments and I'll see if I can't make a video answering any questions. Bye!